They
I
were the
love when I
cheerful,
do Hee Haw.
guitar-playing twins
He
audiences
loves what I
adored
do,
on
too.
Hee Haw.
Most of the time.
With matching blonde hair, identical outfits, and
They were the
light-hearted country humor, John and Jim Hager looked like pure happiness. On stage, everything felt perfect, but behind the smiles were two men facing pressures. Fame brought opportunity, but also struggles. After the show ended, their shared path split in surprising ways, revealing truths long hidden behind the laughter. So, what really happened to the Hager twins after Hee Haw ended? Join us as we uncover the shocking truth of the Hager twins. Hager twins' journey. Jim and John Hager were identical twin brothers born in Chicago on August 30, 1941. From the very beginning, their lives were closely linked. They were adopted together by a kind Methodist minister and his wife, who raised them in the middle of the American Midwest. The twins grew up in Park Ridge, Illinois, where they were rarely seen apart. They dressed alike, walked alike, and even confused their teachers, who often could not tell which twin was which. But their bond went far deeper than looks. Jim and John shared the same sense of rhythm, the same playful humor, and an almost magical ability to finish each other's thoughts. Most importantly, they shared a deep love for music. By the time they were just 11 years old, they were already singing in church choirs, performing at school events, and staying up late practicing guitar. They studied the smooth harmonies of the Everly Brothers and dreamed of one day standing under bright stage lights, singing to huge crowds. That dream slowly began to feel real when they moved west and enrolled in a performing arts college in California. Life there was not easy. The twins took small roles in local theater productions and worked odd jobs just to survive. Their big break did not come from a planned audition or a powerful agent. It came from pure chance. One night, while performing at a small club in Los Angeles, they caught the attention of people connected to Buck Owens, who was quickly becoming a major name in country music. Owens saw something special in them, a natural charm and honesty that could not be taught. He welcomed them into his world and soon hired them as guitarists and backup singers for his live shows. At first, Jim and John were happy just to be nearby. They did not mind staying in the background as long as they were making music. But it did not take long for their presence to stand out. In 1969, CBS approved a brand new country comedy and variety show designed to rival the fast-paced humor of Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. That show became Hee Haw. Buck Owens was chosen as one of the hosts, and when producers asked him for fresh country talent, he gave a simple answer: bring in the Hager twins. That single decision changed everything. Almost overnight, Jim and John became stars. Dressed in matching outfits with their trademark blonde hair, they quickly won over audiences. They were not just musicians. They were funny, charming, and completely natural on camera. Their comedic timing was perfect, their songs were heartfelt, and their chemistry felt real because it was real. Fans adored them. Letters flooded in by the thousands. Women swooned, children copied their look, and the twins became the smiling sweethearts of Hee Haw. But fame has a strange way of hiding the truth. While millions of viewers saw two happy brothers laughing and singing on television, very few knew what was happening behind the scenes. Jim and John were rising quickly, but not in the same way. One twin slowly leaned into the spotlight, while the other began to fade quietly into the background. Even as their fame reached its peak, cracks were already forming. From their first steps onto the Hee Haw set, they looked effortless, whether delivering jokes in cornfield skits or singing emotional ballads between laughs. What challenges did they encounter? Or was it all a pleasure ride? Let's find out. Pressure of fame on the Hager twins behind the cameras. The pressure to stay cheerful, polished, and perfectly wholesome was slowly wearing them down, especially Jim. He was always the quieter twin, more thoughtful, more emotional, and far more sensitive to the heavy demands of fame. While John seemed to light up under the spotlight and enjoy the attention, Jim often pulled away once filming ended. Instead of celebrating after a long day, he preferred silence and solitude. The twins had spent their entire lives doing everything side by side, but now fame was affecting them in very different ways. The work itself never let up. Filming days were long and exhausting. Every joke had to be funny but completely family-friendly, and producers made it clear they didn't want anything too deep or personal. Even though the Hager twins were skilled songwriters and talented guitar players, they were rarely allowed to perform their own music. Everything had to fit the same strict pattern. Smile, joke, sing, repeat. Over time, that routine began to feel like a cage. Eventually, both brothers started to push back. They wanted more creative control, more originality, and more room to grow as artists. But the Hee Haw machine was rigid and unforgiving. It didn't like change, and it didn't bend easily. They were the cheerful, guitar-playing twins audiences adored on Hee Haw. With matching blonde hair, identical outfits, and light-hearted country humor, John and Jim Hager looked like pure happiness. On stage, everything felt perfect, but behind the smiles were two men facing pressures. Fame brought opportunity, but also struggles. After the show ended, their shared path split in surprising ways, revealing truths long hidden behind the laughter. So, what really happened to the Hager twins after Hee Haw ended? Join us as we uncover the shocking truth of the Hager twins. Hager twins' journey. Jim and John Hager were identical twin brothers born in Chicago on August 30, 1941. From the very beginning, their lives were closely linked. They were adopted together by a kind Methodist minister and his wife, who raised them in the middle of the American Midwest. The twins grew up in Park Ridge, Illinois, where they were rarely seen apart. They dressed alike, walked alike, and even confused their teachers, who often could not tell which twin was which. But their bond went far deeper than looks. Jim and John shared the same sense of rhythm, the same playful humor, and an almost magical ability to finish each other's thoughts. Most importantly, they shared a deep love for music. By the time they were just 11 years old, they were already singing in church choirs, performing at school events, and staying up late practicing guitar. They studied the smooth harmonies of the Everly Brothers and dreamed of one day standing under bright stage lights, singing to huge crowds. That dream slowly began to feel real when they moved west and enrolled in a performing arts college in California. Life there was not easy. The twins took small roles in local. They delivered laughter, harmony, and a warm, old-fashioned charm that felt comforting and timeless. But once the cameras stopped rolling, the steady rhythm of their lives disappeared too. Bookings slowed down. Fan mail became rare. The spotlight that once felt warm and welcoming began to fade. At first, John and Jim tried to keep moving forward. They appeared at state fairs, charity events, and small country music festivals. They even recorded a gospel album together, something they had dreamed of doing for years. But the crowds were smaller. The energy was different. Without Hee Haw behind them, they were no longer guaranteed stars. The fame they once held so easily was slipping away, and they felt the loss deeply. John found the decline frustrating. He had always wanted to explore more creative paths, acting in films and writing meaningful songs. He pitched ideas to networks, experimented with solo projects, and even looked into opportunities in Christian television. But doors that once opened without effort now stayed firmly shut. For Jim, the change was far more painful. Without the constant distraction of rehearsals, filming, and travel, he was left alone with thoughts he had buried for years. He withdrew further from the world. Friends say he stopped answering calls and avoided social events. The bright spark fans loved seemed to fade from his eyes. Even when he performed with John, it was clear something was missing. Their connection, once effortless, now felt strained. They were still brothers. Still close. Still bonded by a lifetime of shared memories. But a quiet sadness now lived between them. They never spoke about it openly. The Hagers had always hidden cracks in the armor. Yet those closest to them saw the truth. They saw the pain of fading relevance, the confusion of lost identity, and the haunting questions so many performers face: who am I when no one is watching? They searched for answers in small ways. Jim attended spiritual retreats. John leaned deeper into his faith and spent time volunteering. But healing was slow and uncertain. The past weighed heavily on them. The silence felt overwhelming. For the first time in their lives, the Hager twins didn't know what came next. How was their love life? Did they ever get married and raise a family? Let's take a closer look. Hager Twins' love lives. For many years, the Hager Twins carefully presented themselves as charming lifelong bachelors. On television, they were always smiling, always playful, always just a little mysterious and out of reach. With their clean-cut faces, matching outfits, and confident stage presence, they became some of the most admired heartthrobs on Hee Haw, loved by fans all across the country. To the public, they looked carefree and lucky in love, even if they never settled down. But behind the bright lights and perfectly timed smiles, their real love lives told a much quieter and more complicated story. John Hager, the more outgoing and social twin, was known to date more often. Over the years, he had several relationships that never made the news but sparked plenty of whispers in Nashville. One long-rumored romance involved a well-known country singer, possibly even someone connected to Hee Haw itself. John never spoke about it publicly, but people close to the show noticed how close the two were when cameras were off. There were late-night phone calls, private conversations, and weekends spent far from prying eyes. Like many relationships in the entertainment world, it slowly faded away without drama or public heartbreak, leaving behind memories rather than headlines. John continued dating for years after that. Sometimes the relationships were serious, sometimes casual, but he always kept an emotional distance. Friends often said he had a kind heart, but he never fully let anyone in. He did not chase marriage or long-term promises. What he wanted was companionship, someone to share moments with, without the weight of commitment. It was a quiet pattern that repeated itself again and again. Connections would form, feel meaningful for a while, and then gently slip away. Jim Hager was very different. He dated far less often, but when he did, he loved deeply. One relationship in particular changed him forever. In the late 1980s, Jim met a woman at a charity event in Tennessee. She was not famous and had no ties to the entertainment industry. That was exactly what drew him to her. Around her, Jim seemed lighter and more open than anyone had ever seen him. Friends noticed a calm happiness in him that had never been there before. He talked about the future, about settling down, and about building a quiet life away from television and touring. Then, without warning, everything ended. She passed away unexpectedly. Some said it was due to illness, while others believed it was a car accident. The details were never made public. After her death, Jim stopped talking about her altogether. But those close to him could see the change. Something inside him closed and never reopened. He never seriously dated again. He never pursued marriage. He never tried to replace what he had lost. It was as if a piece of him had been buried alongside her. To the public, John and Jim remained the fun-loving bachelor twins, laughing, singing, and joking on stage. But the truth was far more fragile. Their romantic lives were shaped not by excitement or adventure, but by loss, distance, and quiet heartbreak. Living in the spotlight made real love incredibly difficult. They were always traveling, always performing, always being watched. Privacy was rare, and emotional safety even rarer. In the end, they leaned on each other more than anyone else. They were brothers first, always. That bond became their shelter, their comfort, and their constant in a world that rarely slowed down. But even that closeness could not fully fill the emptiness left behind by love that never lasted and love that was taken too soon. As the years passed, the loneliness grew heavier. Relationships came and went, but the ache never faded. No applause, no laughter, and no bright studio lights could replace what was missing. What came next was not a story of romance, but of reckoning. A slow and painful understanding that time was slipping away. And for one of the twins, it would slip away far sooner than anyone expected. What caused to gradually fade away? Was a personal issue? Let's find out. Sudden decline of Hager Twins. By the mid-2000s, the Hager Twins were far removed from the bright spotlight they once enjoyed on Hee Haw. Their big television days were over. They still performed from time to time, but now it was mostly at state fairs, small-town festivals, and nostalgia shows made for longtime fans who remembered their glory years. The crowds were smaller, the stages were quieter, and the excitement that once followed them everywhere had slowly faded. Time had clearly left its mark. Their once famous matching blonde hair had turned gray, and the youthful energy that made them so beloved no longer came as easily. While both brothers felt the weight of the years, Jim Hager struggled the most. The lively, magnetic personality fans remembered was slowly replaced by long stretches of silence, sudden mood changes, and a deep exhaustion that went far beyond simple aging. He could still deliver a joke when needed and always stayed professional once the curtain went up, but the people closest to him could see something was wrong. There were quiet conversations behind the scenes. Friends spoke softly about the medications Jim was taking, about how isolated he had become, and about the depression he had been fighting for years without drawing attention to it. Unlike John, who found some comfort in spiritual work and occasional songwriting, Jim seemed lost. He stopped talking about what came next. He rarely looked back at what had been. Most days, he wasn't really living, he was just getting through them. The twins had always shared a deep bond, but now that connection felt different. During interviews, John often found himself doing most of the talking. Jim would nod along, smile politely, and maybe add a short comment, but the spark that once made him half of one of country television's most loved duos was fading fast. Then, on May 1, 2008, that spark disappeared completely. Jim Hager was found dead in his Nashville apartment. He was 66 years old. The official cause was listed as an apparent heart attack. But to those who truly knew him, it felt like more than that. It was the final result of years of quiet suffering, declining health, deep loneliness, and the heavy burden of living in the shadow of who he used to be. John was shattered. The twins had been inseparable for more than 6 decades, standing side by side through fame, failure, laughter, and loss. Now, for the first time in his life, John Hager was alone. He didn't speak to the press in the days after Jim's death. Friends later said John was inconsolable. He wandered through their shared home in silence, unable to sleep in the same room where they once practiced and planned their future. So, how did John cope after Jim's demise? Did he carry on the legacy? Let's find out. John's grief after the loss. After Jim Hager passed away suddenly in 2008, something inside John Hager broke. The world had always known them as the Hager Twins. They were never seen as separate people, only as a pair. 2 smiles. 2 voices. 2 matching cowboy boots. But now, for the first time in 66 years, John had to live alone. Just John. And that feeling was too heavy to carry. After Jim's funeral, friends tried to call and check on him, but John did not answer. The laughter that once came so easily was gone. He lost weight. His voice became soft. He walked more slowly. He turned down interviews, public appearances, and even reunion offers from Hee Haw. When people asked why, he would quietly say, "I don't know how to be half of anything." At home, nothing changed. Jim's guitar stayed on its stand, untouched. Their matching stage outfits still hung neatly in the closet. Every morning, John set the breakfast table the same way, even leaving Jim's place ready, as if his brother might walk in late and make a joke. But he never did. John had always seemed stronger, more outgoing, more able to face life's problems. But without Jim, he had no fight left. They had shared everything since birth. Birthdays, songs, hotel rooms, heartbreaks, even silence. Now John was surrounded by a quiet that felt wrong. He watched old Hee Haw recordings and smiled at Jim's perfect timing, then stared at the screen when they ended. Fans sent letters, but John rarely replied. It was not because he was rude. He was simply empty. One close friend later said that John did not die when Jim died, but something important inside him did. Grief had settled deep into him. He did not turn to drugs or distractions. He only lived with memories and loss. Although doctors found no serious illness, John's health faded quickly. His tests looked normal, but he seemed tired, like a man who had already said goodbye. On January 9, 2009, less than a year after Jim's death, John Hager passed away quietly in his sleep at their shared home in Nashville. He was 67 years old. There was no warning and no clear medical reason. Some called it a broken heart. Others said it was fate.